Welcome. I'm Tom Beatty, co-founder and CEO of Octo AI, a condo intelligence company and makers of Eli Report, a condo document review tool used by thousands of owners, buyers, realtors, property managers, and others across North America. Continuing to innovate, we're helping owners with our annual benchmark report and tools for other stakeholders that create mutual wins. We talk about strata so much that we decided to elevate condo voices, and today I'm delighted to welcome Katharine Olson. Katharine grew up immersed in strata management through her family and built a diverse career in property management, earning her real estate and managing broker licenses while gaining experience in both strata and rental communities. After a stint in retail leadership at a Fortune 500 company, she returned to strata management and now helps shape industry training programs as an instructor and speaker. Allow me to introduce Katharine, the founder of Groundbreaking Strata.
Hey, nice to be here. I'm excited. It's gonna be awesome. Yeah.
It will.
Yeah.
Big topic today. We are talking
on the there we go. Front slide.
about stratas. Take it away.
Yeah. Well, I thought I really aptly named this session actually because as a strata manager, whenever I meet someone new, without fail, I only get two responses. And it's I could never do your job or I hate my strata. So I thought we should cover, and a lot of that is just because people don't understand what strata is. So what is the freaking deal with strata? Let's go into the agenda slide. So what we're kind of aiming to touch on today. So what is a strata really? Why is it so complicated? Kind of lifting the veil behind councils, some basic things that owners need to dig into more, 3 things specifically, and where do we go from here? So that's what I'm hoping to cover today.
That makes a lot of sense. These are big
They
topics,
are.
and of those voices that approach you, I'm always the first one. I'm like, oh, I
Yeah.
couldn't do your job.
That means you
I
probably
repeatedly
understand
tell
it.
anybody that will
People who
listen
understand it say that, the
that
ones
yes,
that don't
yes.
say it the other way.
I always approach it from I was an investment banker and I couldn't do that job. It just is. It is really difficult.
Special, isn't it?
So what is strata?
So I put this slide first on purpose because I think that if more people even understood the big picture context, they might be making some different choices. A strata plan is filed at the land title office by the developer. It's how the developer just registered the property. Every owner becomes a member automatically. That's when the strata is born, basically. So strata corporation, strata is just a big grown-up word that means y'all share the building and y'all take care of it together, right? But like in legalese. So there's no them, it's us, right? It's you. Yes, legal corporation. A strata is a legal corporation, right? Council of owners, shared responsibility, but you are the strata. So when people are like, oh, I hate my strata, I'm like, ooh, okay, kind of uncomfortable, but you hate yourselves, kind of. So, yeah. And I think
the dynamic is interesting, right? When you've got such a potentially diverse group of people living under that structure, you get different views, different opinions, you have different ages and different cultures. And that will lead to certainly some.
Well, and I think too,
times.
from an abstract standpoint, people are not looking at strata the right way. You can't think of it as a bunch of detached homes that are stacked or placed adjacent. It is literally something else completely different. It's a living ecosystem, people and policies together. It's not building blocks. It's not Lego, unfortunately. I wish it was. So. No. Going into the next slide, I mean, if I hadn't already made it clear through the last slide, why? I mean, it gets messy, right? Just even the description of what a strata is, it sounds like it gets messy. And I have to say, I love this image. Shout out to Strata Crisis BC. They have a lot of really amazing information on that site. And I think that this image in particular really nails all the chaos of strata, all the people, all the moving parts. You know, it's a lot, right? That's somewhere between a quarter and a third of the province's population in stratas. And I would playfully argue that 99% of them don't know how it works. And not because they're being willfully careless or difficult. It's because no one ever taught them, right? Like there was no strata economics in high school that I'm aware of. Like, I don't know, Thomas, your high school, did you guys cover that?
No, but they didn't even teach us about mortgages and finance. I mean, they definitely didn't teach us about
Yeah,
this. And for those that can't see this diagram, it's difficult
yeah.
to interpret. There's 20 different bodies on there, all interacting with the Strata Corporation and those that are
Yeah.
around it. So it is a
Yeah,
messy
and
picture.
the first strata law, that's the Condominium Act, that was 1966. Current one, Strata Property Act, the year 2000. So even thinking about those dates, you know what's older, besides both of us. Um, sorry, low blow. Airbnb, EV chargers, iPhones, vaping. So you can see how things have exponentially compounded,
Moved
right?
on.
So, what happens?
Yeah.
The decisions and the conflicts drag on. Owners and councils, they kind of start to check out and insulate from each other, and things start to fall apart, right? So, yeah, it's a bit of a mess. So,
And who are these unpaid volunteers?
we are going to get to that in our next slide. So, if you happen to go through ever any of the Strata Facebook pages or Reddit pages, I know, like, I don't comment on them because that's kind of dangerous.
Those are
Yeah,
fun.
but
Yeah.
you'll notice a really definitive theme, and it's our council is the worst. I've heard it a lot. I've even said it on occasion. But again, reality check. These are unpaid, untrained volunteers elected from within the ownership. They're dealing with legal, financial, building systems, people, problems, everything all at once at the same time. No off switch, no backup usually. They are being accosted in the mailroom, in the lobby, in the gym. That doesn't sound like a job that I want, like when I say it like that.
Do many put their hand up for
Well,
that? It doesn't sound
no, and
tempting.
I like a lot of strata managers are seeing a trend or have noticed a trend on the inside that it's harder and harder to get people to want to join councils. And okay, so yes, a lot of great members do join in good faith to help, but I also know that some of the problem is, and I have to validate some of the comments in the Facebook pages, in that there are council members who join because of self-interest, boredom, or power, right? That's a reality. But we still have to, as humans, kind of remember that they're still juggling the weight of the pressure, the politics, the liability, and they don't see the big picture usually. So yeah, egos flare, control kind of like creeps in a little bit. Things get personal, grudges are held for a long time in stratas. That happens. That's a reality. But ultimately, I think what councils and what owners have to remember is that the council is a nonprofit community group serving the greater good for everyone living there. So it's not always about being right, which, trust me, I've had to remind myself plenty of times. But it's about responsibility, right? So, yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that list and you think of it, and it is quite political. You have dozens to hundreds of people in many cases in these communities. And once you've opted in, you take it seriously, I hope in most cases, but it can be a burden and it can be an obligation. And I'm kind of wondering from your experience, Katharine, like I've heard some things. What personalities get attracted to this role of Strata Council member?
Again, it could, like I said, it could be people who are looking for a way to fill their day. People who used to be in other professional spheres in their pre-retirement life that want to stay involved. People who genuinely want to give back in a community or civic level. There's lots of reasons, but there's also the people who join because they want to get their renovation approved, or they want to push through this thing that they like, or they want to get their cousin's company hired to do the contract. So that does happen, but I find one of the biggest challenges more so is people who are well-meaning join the council gung-ho, and then they get behind the veil, like with the Wizard of Oz, and they're like, oh my God, he's not a wizard, he's just a man. And then they realize there's no like magic thing, there's no us. The council's it's just people, and we just have more work to do. So that I think is kind of a shock thing for some people who even well-meaning join councils, like, oh, you know, and then they're like, oh. So I always find that really amusing when I see that light in their eyes, be like, whew, the realization hits at a council meeting.
Right.
Not gonna lie, as a strata manager that's fought against certain dynamics, when I see that realization in their eyes, I do have a little bit of personal satisfaction. So yeah.
Right. Well, most of them are there
They
for all the
are.
right
They are.
reasons, and I guess in collaboration with their property
Yeah.
managers, in many cases, they
You
can
know
get a
what? They
lot
do.
done.
They do. Most of them are good eggs. So moving into, okay, so now we kind of know who the players are. So what is strata? What's council? So what are, as owners, what are 3 things that you can bulk up your knowledge on or that you should know about? Thing number 1, you need to know who does what. Straight up, a lot of problems in strata are just that people don't know this, right? Okay, so common example, the hallway light's been out for 3 weeks, right? Somebody thinks it's the council's job. Council thinks the caretaker's doing it. The caretaker thinks an electrician's being called out. The owners are bitching to each other in the mailroom. There's an angry Facebook thread starting about our strata never fixes anything, but nobody's emailed the strata manager and the light is still out. And that's just one directive for one light bulb. Yeah.
It gets more complicated.
Yeah, that's
than
just
that.
one light bulb. So, you know, it can be really fun, but there's a lot of moving pieces too. Yeah, I've put a brief description up on the slide of the responsibilities of each party. It's very simplified, obviously, but governance only works if everyone understands their roles. So just a tip, I'll post some resources in the comments to dig deeper into what these roles are and what their practical duties are. I'll pop that into the chat. But if you're using published guides from the various professional groups, like a code of ethics or a council role description, which I strongly encourage councils to do, keep them in their original form on the letterhead. I never change the logo out or amend it when I use those guides, because the official voices, they carry authority in those conversations. And sometimes it's about letting the expertise of those documents do some of the heavy lifting for you. You know, it's not just Katharine, the strata manager, saying that you need to do X, Y, Z. You know, now it's the fine folks of the association who have recommended it so, right? So it carries more authority. So I highly recommend that you dig into some of the resources. But owners, I think, sometimes get an idea that they are more participatory than they are, and the council gets the feeling that they are more directorial than they are. And everybody just needs to work more. That's the problem. So, yeah.
And it, you know, it starts with a developer.
True.
They build it, and then what?
That's about it. After the first AGM, really, in terms of due diligence and warranties and defects, absolutely, they do have some responsibilities that extend past the end of their involvement. But I think a lot of times councils and owners get really bogged down in clinging to the development phase and not looking at like the future planning. I'm not saying don't follow up with your developer on warranty or other things, but focus your priorities on what what is going to be achievable and realistic for you versus, okay, what's a deal breaker and what do we actually just need to move forward and plan for? Because I think I've seen new builds that fight against the developers for years instead of just getting good preventative maintenance programs in place because they've spent all their money on lawsuits and things. So I'm not saying don't, and this is not legal advice, right. But I think just, yes, the developer builds it and they control it for a bit, but I think you just need to see them more as the entity that handed the baton over, not somebody to fight with and not someone to cling to, you know what I mean? So
that first AGM, it's a passing of the torch. The developer is handing it off, and it goes off to the property manager.
It goes off to the strata corporation, right? That's when you're electing your first council, right? Because the strata manager is not the decision maker; they are the process enabler for council. The council's in charge.
I think that's widely misunderstood. I think that people kind of expect their manager will do it, and their manager doesn't just magically do things,
Yeah,
do they?
no, and we're going to kind of get into that in the next slide as well, actually. So moving in, talking
Fantastic.
about
Let's
meetings.
go there.
Yeah, so that said, meetings are not just administrative, to be clear, because I think that's also something like people see them as an annoyance. They are very consequential. And it's not to say I don't get it. I know most people would rather skip them, myself included sometimes. Strata meetings often somehow manage to be both boring and anxiety inducing. So it's a really wonderful combination. Um, yeah, it's pretty special. But remember that Adam Sandler movie Click from like the 2000s? Did you see it?
I didn't, but
Okay,
I know
so it's
Adam
the one where he
Sandler.
uses the remote to fast forward through all the boring parts of his life, the arguments, traffic, family, stuff like that. Spoiler, at the end of the story, he realizes that those boring parts were where the actual living happens. Yeah, it's a little sappy, but for real, that's where you learn and grow and show up for your people. That's what strata meetings are, right? They're the boring parts and they're the place where matters get decided. So necessary evil, maybe, but super important, honestly. Yeah.
Right. Shared living, shared decisions. You've
Yeah.
got it right there. So you are coming together to make these decisions themselves. And what's this about if it's not in the minutes, it didn't happen?
So just in terms of bare minimum to get yourself set up for a meeting, just to be clear, make sure that you have a clear agenda written down. Getting the information out in advance, make sure that people have a shot. These are volunteers to read it. And if you send it to them the night before, they're busy. They're not going to get it read. The meeting's going to be unproductive. Make sure that there is a chairperson, either the strata manager facilitating or a strong council member that can really hold the space and keep things focused, because that's one of the biggest detriments and time wastes is just some of the dynamics and lack of focus in meetings. And yeah, so as you mentioned, if it's not in the minutes, it didn't happen. So these things I'm putting on here, these are not just best practices. Some of these things are required by law. Council meetings that are made, council decisions that are made outside of properly called meetings, like decisions made through email chains and group chats on WhatsApp or Slack or whatever, they aren't valid until they're ratified in meeting minutes. Now, is that widely flouted? Yeah, maybe. And there are exceptions, like emergencies under Section 98 of the Act, or if they have a specific bylaw that's been enacted that allows them to make email decisions. So yes, there's exceptions always, because there'll be people that will point that out to me. But in general, BC Supreme Court cases spanning more than a decade now have reinforced that. So if you look back all the way to like the Kane decision in 2013 or the Cassie decision in 2023, so long time, not just right now, this has not changed.
Yeah.
This has existed the whole time. Meetings are a non-negotiable. If it's not in the minutes, it didn't happen in the eyes of the court, right?
And from what I've seen from countless meeting minutes, generally the Strata Council members do appear and gather for their Strata Council meetings, and they make those minutes. But when it says show up, even if only once a year, is that the owners?
Yeah.
So this is the AGM?
And you'd be surprised, some of the loudest people in email are some of the least present in person. I guess maybe that's not that surprising, but it I hope that will shift. I think if people could get in front of each other once a year at least, and speak their truth in a respectful way, and try to come together to set their priorities as a group, I think most stratas could be far more productive than they are right now. Just that one change alone.
Excellent.
So
there you have it. Thing 2, why meetings matter.
I used to dread
Let's
meetings.
get on
Now
to
I love them.
the thing with 3, right?
They're fun. Thing number 3, where fees go. So the last thing you need to know as an owner is your strata fees. But I'm not just saying like know where your dollar signs are, but know the meaning behind them, because strata fees aren't just some abstract numbers. And I also would like to say price is not king. Can we please get rid of that? Like, it hurts. Money is about trust and priorities, especially where it comes to stratas, right? Most of the time, strata fee issues are not about mismanagement. They're about mistiming or misalignment. Yeah, yeah. So in terms of staying aligned and understanding where your strata fees are, as a council, start your budget process early. So you're not starting at the end of the year or in the new fiscal year. Look at your expenses. You know what you're approving already. You should be able to accrue things. Like it would be alarming to me if you didn't know what was going to be happening in your building at the last 2 months of the fiscal year when you're right in the middle of it. That scares me a little bit already. Check your contracts in advance. See if you're even like, you don't need to tender over all your contracts every year. You're going to get more stable service, better prices, more consistent numbers, more accurate budget numbers if you're sticking to the same vendors where you are happy with their service. There's no major changes to scope or price, right? That's why I stuck that little image in there. I love that one. But I think sometimes we have to be reminded that you never get all three things: speed, price.
I see that, yes. For those that can't see it, there's a beautiful Venn diagram that tells you that fast, good, and cheap is not possible. So you're trading off against everything
exactly.
else.
Yeah. Read your depreciation
Excellent.
reports, talk about your goals as a group. I think a lot of where strata councils fail financially is because they don't even look at what's coming down the pipe or how they plan to get there in terms of what they're going to save. There's no strata lottery. Like, you can't just be like, oh, maybe we'll win the lottery. That's our CRF plan. Like, that's, I feel like sometimes how people are acting. They're like, oh, we'll just try to push this until we can sell and no one will notice our buildings falling down, and we'll somehow get to still extricate our current value even though the building's falling down around us. Like, does that make sense? I don't think so.
You can join me next week as we talk about not so special levies.
Yeah, I will get into special levies, separate topic for sure. But I just think talk about those goals with your money and your budget planning, etc. It's the old adage: you can do it right once or do it cheap twice or more, right? So,
Very true.
Unplanned, last minute, reactive, always going to be more expensive than doing proactive planned maintenance.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what is
next? I want to start by saying, if you're listening to this and you're in the world of strata, you're not alone. Don't feel like you have to know everything. It's really hard. And it's normal to feel a little lost where it comes to strata, for sure. There's a whole web of support out there. We basically have the whole alphabet of professional associations. We got HOA, CCI, VISOA, PAMA, BOMA, and they exist for a reason, right? So reach out, get those reputable guides and sources of information, try their helplines or their email, services. Ask weird questions, even if you are embarrassed by them. Join webinars, like as a group, assign learning as a council. This is not homework. I think that strata managers, councils have to see this as strategy for their corporation. And those of you who might be like owners joining, I'd say you want to be confident in your strata role, then show up, right? Hold space for accountability in yourself. So don't go in guns blazing, trying to blame everyone else. Go in, go in with curiosity and compassion and ask questions and seek to learn. Read the documents that everyone is avoiding reading, and, speak up and do something before there's a crisis in your building. That's what I would kind of encourage. What's next for strata? There's a lot I'd like to see for the future.
It sounds practical and pragmatic. Before we turn it over for Q&A, you've got a summer series coming out, and I think there's a date for the first one. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we're going to be at Cider House outside of Victoria in Saanich on July 10th at 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock. It's going to be a coming together of just listening to stories and talking about the challenges and the realities and the wins that we've all had. Owners, strata managers, related strata professionals, you're all invited to attend. We'll have some refreshments and such. Totally free event, no RSVP needed, and you can check out our socials for some more detail.
Fantastic. We'll be sure to share that. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to some Q&A. So I see that there have been a couple of observations made. I will share some of those with you. Someone has asked, how does Strata Council decision-making actually work? And does the president have more say than the other Strata Council members?
So it's majority. So different decisions will be made in different ways. So you have to look specifically on the type of decision that's being made before you can say who's supposed to decide it. So if it's approval of the annual budget or a major expenditure or something where you're going to change the use or appearance of common property, those decisions do have to be brought to the ownership for a vote, either a majority or 3/4 based on the type. But just day-to-day operations, those are made by council majority vote. And yes, the president has some more power, but it shouldn't be a situation a lot. Like if it's so often that you guys are 50-50 divided that the council has to enact their second tie-breaking vote, then there's already some really clear dynamics and divisions within that council. So yes, they do get the tie-breaking vote, but that's about it.
They don't really
No,
carry
there's
any
not
extra
really
weight.
any extra power, and that's why we like to have odd-numbered councils anyways, and encourage quorum and people to show up so it doesn't happen, right? So
that makes sense. There's another question here. It says, I'm a new Strata Council member. What resources are there for me beyond CHOA? I think you've listed a few other alphabets there.
Vizoa on Vancouver
But what
Island
would you
also does a lot
suggest?
of education. There's some other organizations out there that do it. Within your building as well, if you're a smaller council and you have trades that are going to be coming in and on the site, what I'd recommend, if you're curious to learn more, just ask the trade without getting in their way. If you can tag along with what they're doing and ask some questions here and there. And again, don't get in their way or micromanage, but like it's a really good way to learn things without paying extra. And if you are within a place where as a council you can afford to spend some more on education, you can always seek out to hire professionals. Like Groundbreaking does education for councils. But to be clear, there's so many free resources out there that that's not really the service I like to push, because there's such a big shared knowledge base in the industry actually.
There is, but everybody when they first join a Strata Council is new. And
you don't know what you don't
I know
know,
that you're
for sure
thinking very strongly about Strata education, and I think that'll be a repeated theme as we continue.
I think so too. I think there needs to be a big push for Strata Council education. Ontario's had a framework for it for quite some time. I would say it's insufficient, but at least they have it. So I think that there's quite a push though from a number of different parties who are wanting to look at some of these things, which is really cool.
Excellent. I've got a few more questions. We'll get to a couple of them before we wrap. What should we think about before changing management companies?
This one's kind of a loaded question because I'm not actually one that will say you should do that. There's a lot of knowledge loss between management companies. A lot of files aren't transferred over and a lot of emails are lost through Outlook. I would just say instead, don't attack. Don't go on the offense. Try to defensively, kindly, curiosity and compassion. Try to talk to your strata manager. Look, hey, what can we do? Like, where's like these priorities, etc. How can we get to a better place and work with them, work with the broker, see how you can, as a council, support them. Because sometimes the council's expectation of what they're supposed to carry is a little bit off, and they can be doing more work than they are doing. Right. So there's a number of things that you can do. All the brokerages in town are a little different, and I think sometimes the industry gets a little too competitive, whereas we should all be looking at each other more as all the different beautiful and different personalities all the different brokerages and corporate cultures have. So think about what your priorities are as a council and a group and a community, and then find the brokerage that feels like they align with that the best and has systems that you feel like are going to support you. But I'm not really one to say brokerage hop. I think that's really silly. And it's part of the reason why you're also seeing such a churn of strata managers. Like,
That is a compounding
yeah.
factor, isn't it? Because you've got high management turnover, and then if you switch, you're just exacerbating that knowledge transfer.
Well, and it's
needing
funny
to get
because
them
there's a
back
lot
up to speed.
of cyclical churn of strata managers. So, like, hey, you hated Bob the manager.
Right.
Well, guess what? He just left that brokerage and now he's at the brokerage. And like, there, it's like,
Yeah.
I always find that amusing.
Right.
So,
Well, you've said a couple of things here that I think will be of interest with some of our upcoming speakers. We've got Jason Kurtz from Strata West coming on to talk a bit about manager retention in a high turnover industry. We've got Sean Jordan from Strata Press talking about simplifying your workflow as a Strata council.
yeah, tech
And one of
stack
the
can be
things I know
crazy.
that Strata Press does really well is the documents stick with the strata. So as you switch from one firm to another on Strata Press, you lose none of that communication. You lose 0 documents. There's a handoff between management firms, one that releases it, one that accepts it, and all of that communication remains. So some exciting developments there for the future. I have one more on a slightly different topic, but one that's interesting and might merit further discussion down the line. How should strata corporations prepare for mandatory environmental reporting?
That's an interesting one because I kind of tried to get my foot in the door into some of those conversations with the municipality. Because I don't necessarily think that what's being handed down as the framework and direction from the legislative bodies makes a lot of sense on the ground and the reality of councils and their knowledge and their ability. Where it comes to reporting, carbon reporting, electrical planning reports, any of that, I'm sorry to say, you got to bite the bullet and hire a professional to do it. Don't mess around in it. Don't try to expect your strata manager who's not going to be any better at it than you are potentially. So just do it right instead of just messing it all up.
Right.
Honestly, please, I beg of you. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're out of time. So what I'll say as closing remarks is that if you have an idea, connect with me on LinkedIn, Thomas Beatty at OctoAI. Thank you all for joining us. We'll have Katharine back soon, and we'll see you on the next one.